Hi, Easy here. Welcome to a build showcase of my 3.14 Ultimatum starter. It is a Blood, Exsanguinate, Reap, Corrupted Fever character. That's a Scion, currently level 77. Just completed very little of my Atlas because the servers have been absolute garbage, so I haven't been able to play much. Currently have pretty decent amount of life, and it's a self-cast character. So you might think like it's a little clunky, but I hope I can show you uh, how the gameplay looks and feels and convince you that it's not that bad. Spell slinging, I don't think is the best way, to be quite honest. So the main reason why I don't think it's the best way is because it's very similar to how chaos slingers are. If you know, a lot of people will do chaos slingers early on and then swap over to self cast contagion and essence drain, and along with essence drain and contagion, they would also add in something like blight, and it's essentially the same concept. The only difference is that we scale with physical damage, physical damage over time, and generic damage over time increases, and we don't have access to wither. On the other hand, because it's physical damage, there are other ways to scale the damage as well. And I think most notably, because it uses life, uh, and because we're because it's not as easy to scale the physical damage, it does confine us into pretty limited options, and there's no clear winner in terms of which ascendancy is best. Because for Trickster, like it's by far the best option. Or for Essence Drain, Trickster is by far the best option because it's near all of the chaos damage over time multiplier nodes, and it's near all the spell damage nodes and etc. But physical damage, there is none, or there's very little near where Shadow Area is. There's a lot of damage over time, but not necessarily physical damage nodes, and a lot of the juicy ones that just got added are actually near Marauder. So that means we have to take advantage of either an inefficient, we either have to settle with an inefficient pathing with something like a Trickster, or we settle with a slightly worse ascendancy, but much better pathing with something like a Scion, which is what I've decided to do here. And if you've been keeping up with how build starters have been going and what other content creators think about Exsanguinate in general, you'll notice that Scion isn't necessarily anything unique, nor is the ascendancy combination of um, Gladiator plus um, Necromancer is unique either. Like it's not, I'm not revolutionizing the world here, but I hope that the playstyle that I'm promoting can be unique enough to differentiate from other playstyles that have been popping up. So because I'm doing an ascendancy trial, it might not seem like I'm doing much, but essentially we have three main dot components. We have Corrupting Fever, which is this little buff right here, and if we pop it, it works exactly like Blood Rage, where if we spend enough of our life as a resource, um, it will refresh the duration. So this is something that you only pop once, and you can just maintain throughout the map. And every time we hit enemies, it will put a stack of corrupting blood. And every time we hit, it either adds on a stack if it's not 10, or it maintains the stacks at 10, at max stacks. So it refreshes by itself. So it's not like you have to hit 10 times in 1 second in order to maintain the debuff or anything like that. Each of these, each of the three dots also have a secondary duration, the dot duration of 1 second. So scaling skill effect duration is also very convenient because it helps with a lot of the quality of life for all three skills. The other two skills are going to be Exsanguinate and Reap. And now you might notice like I'm only using Exsanguinate, and that's because Exsanguinate with Chain and Unleash is by far the best option when it comes to clearing maps between Reap and Exsanguinate. But Reap is also an extremely strong addition to our single target DPS. Not just Corrupting Fever, not just Exsanguinate, but also Reap, because we scale skill effect duration, each of the debuff lasts long enough for us to be able to apply all three dots without affecting the uptime of either one. So as you can see, whenever there are rare mobs or mobs that are living for longer than our initial Exsanguinate cast, I go ahead and throw in a quick Reap. And for longer mobs, I'll alternate between Reap and Exsanguinate. Of course, Corrupting Fever automatically applies on every single hit, so I don't have to worry about that. But that's the general gameplay. You just swap back and forth between Reap and Exsanguinate for single target, and purely Exsanguinate for AoE clears. And although Reap and Exsanguinate have some of the highest cast speeds, with 0.8 seconds as base cast time, we can, even with a little bit of cast speed investment, it starts to feel honestly not that bad. I'm just gonna go ahead and just keep pushing for it. So one inconvenient thing at my current gear level is that I don't have Triggercraft, so I have to manually cast Desecrate and Bone Offering every like 15 seconds. But it's good enough that the survivability bonus is just too strong for me to ignore. Oftentimes I'll die because I don't have the Bone Offering up. But Exsanguinate's clear is honestly really amazing. I wouldn't recommend using it as a self-cast before you get Chain, but after you get Chain, the world just changes. It's just so strong. I used Mines. I know people recommend using Spellslinger, but I personally didn't feel very strongly about that. Here's a little showcase of Reap. Yeah, it's gone. Like, mind you, I'm solo self on gear. There is nothing special about my gear. I have this as my weapon, which I crafted on Physical Multiplier that I found from Betrayal. It's no added gem levels, no cold iron point, whatever that +3 physical gem level jewel is. Yeah, it's just pure damage. And it's actually quite insane how easy this damage is to come by. So that's kind of where my character is right now. Let me grab this Citadel real quick. And I'll go over a lot of the choices that I've made and decisions that kind of influenced my thought process and how I plan to take this into Endgame. Mainly, there are a lot of problems with the build that I still haven't solved, and I hope I can have an open discussion on what the best method, what the best route is for solving these problems. I have an inkling, I have an idea, but I'm not sure how costly, number one, how costly things will be, and number two, how feasible these solutions are. Like how viable are they? Is it just a fat pipe dream, or is it something that we can actually accomplish? Yeah, these unique bosses just keep popping up, and every single time you just reap them away. Reap plus Exsanguinate plus Corrupted Fever just melts every single one of these guys, and it's actually insane how quickly they disappear. I'll just grab random stuff. I don't think it's important. Okay, so let's go over the actual skills themselves. Skill gems, what I'm running right now. I have a 5-link of, let's see, Exsanguinate with Brutality, Unleash, Control Destruction, and Chain. You can, the three gems that I would recommend as a priority is going to be Exsanguinate, Unleash, and Chain. So those three enable you to clear maps and clear your screen. Anything after that is going to be damage. So brutality and control destruction. And I'm still debating on what the sixth link is going to be. Maybe it'll be cruelty, which is the new one, or it'll be something else. I'm not 100% sure. Next, we have Corrupting Fever. We have Corrupting Fever with brutality, efficacy, and swift affliction. Later down the line, I believe I'll replace efficacy with Empower if I can get it to level 4, because I believe that has a better damage output. And there's also helmets and glove essence modifiers that give socketed gems a plus 30% more damage over time effect. So that's basically a pseudo fifth link that we can get on helmet gloves. So on my gloves, I have Reap. Reap with efficacy, controls destruction, and brutality. So the way that Reap works is every time you swing a Reap and it hits a target but doesn't kill it, you get a stack of blood charge. And you just want to gradually stack up your Reap so that eventually you're hitting for, I believe, 75% more damage with your Reap, which is a substantial damage increase compared to just running Exsanguinate and Corrupting Fever. Because these two, when you're just using these two, you end up having situations where you're just casting Exsanguinate without all of your Unleash charges, which defeats the purpose of using Unleash. But with Unleash, the reason why Unleash is so good with Exsanguinate is because Exsanguinate stacks up to 3 times. So you always want to have the Exsanguinate debuff stacked up to 3, but in order to do that, you have to have a cast speed of 0.33, which is difficult to achieve with the amount of investment that we have available. And even at 0.33 cast speed, that assumes that you're casting all of the Exsanguinates while you're standing still. Now, if you increase the base duration to something like 2 seconds, that obviously goes down to 0.66, but that doesn't change the fact that you're standing still for those entire time that you're stacking up to 3 and maintaining those 3 stacks. So I just see as Unleash as something that's it won't show your damage increase in PoE as strongly as some of the other support gems, but I think it's by far the strongest support gem that you have available, because I see it as almost a 3 times more damage multiplier in a realistic scenario. So Exsanguinate remains unleashed, but Reap doesn't, because Reap, each blood charge stays up for 10 seconds, so we don't really need to rush to 5 blood charges with Unleash. We just need to maintain it over time. And a lot of endgame bosses, we're most likely not going to be melting them, just because of the limitations of damage over time skills. So I'm not too worried about that, but being able to maintain 5 stacks with an additional support gem that has more damage multiplier instead of unleashes less damage multiplier, I think will be much better for higher damage output. Corrupting Fever is just something that we don't really have to worry about. It's a fire and forget. You just enter the map, press it, and then it just self-maintains with the skills that we're using. Other gems that I'm using are going to be, I currently have a Vitality and Malevolence, as well as Herald of Purity. These are the 3 auras that I'm using at the moment. I will definitely be changing these as time comes. I have a simple Flame Dash we made an upgrade with Arcane Surge now. I probably should have been doing this, which will give us increased cast speed and more damage, more spell damage, which does scale Exsanguinate and Reap. So Flame Dash just to move around. On the other sides, we have Desecrate and Bone Offering. So currently we are self-casting this nonsense, which is absolute garbage. I mentioned earlier, but the fact that I have to self-cast this is really miserable. So I'm looking to get a wand with Triggercraft. Now, Triggercraft did get nerfed so that if you're crafting it from the crafting bench, it's every 8 seconds instead of every 4 seconds. But if you unveil it, it's every 4 seconds like before. And it doesn't count as a crafted modifier if you unveil it. Now, the problem is you have to assume that the item that the weapon that was unveiled is good enough for you to craft on an additional modifier and be better than what you would normally use. So that might be a concern for other builds, but for us, the only thing that we're going to be putting in into our Triggercraft is going to be Bone Offering and maybe some other utility that I haven't thought of. Maybe Tempest Shield for extra block chance, right? So this isn't really that much of a nerf, especially because Bone Offering has a base duration of 5 seconds, I believe. Base duration of 5 seconds, we have about 80% increase spell, or 70% increase skill effect duration. So we're sitting at like 8.65, and we get additional 1 second base duration per extra corpse consumed. And because we're not using those corpses for anything else, we can always assume that it's 10-second base duration, which is by default on base longer than the actual cooldown. So it's going to be 100% uptime. We are also currently using Enduring Cry with Call to Arms. Now, this is an initial setup that I did before I had all the gem information, especially in Path of Building. So I will be eventually dropping this entire section, bottom left Marauder section, and opting to go up to get Spiritual Aid, and going in the Witch section to get Arcane Guarding to ensure that I have max block chance. And then another big reason why we're up in the Witch area is because we have access to Pain Attunement. I think Pain Attunement is going to be a really big addition to this build, and we might be making sacrifices in terms of defensives, but I think it's going to be the best option. I'm looking at getting a Prism Guardian to be able to reserve more auras on my life bar without running blood magic and stuff like that and dealing with all that nonsense, and running Petrified Blood. Now, Petrified Blood, this is going to be a lot of speculation, a lot of not necessarily speculation, but more of just theory crafting that's not really grounded in any kind of evidence. I think when it comes to using Petrified Blood, we have to but we have to take care of certain problems that come with using Petrified Blood. Number one is the fact that although we're low life, we have to take care of the fact that we're constantly going to be degenning whenever we do get hit. Whatever we get hit with, we're going to get a degen from that. And not only that, we also have to worry about chaos degens and other damage over time effects that might exist, such as poison, ignites if you can't get helmet immunity and stuff like that. So degens are going to be extremely dangerous. So how do we address that? Another question is, we're using life as our resource. So right now, when we have 5,300 life, spending 76 life, or in the case for Exsanguinate, 125 life is a drop in the bucket. It doesn't matter. Our natural regen covers that. But what if you cut our life in half? Now it's twice as costly in terms of our effective life pool for us to be casting this, especially Corrupting Fever. I know Corrupting Fever is you only cast it in the beginning, but this already costs us 859 life, and as the gem level goes up and up, it costs more and more. I believe at gem level 20, it's going to cost almost 1,500 life. And as you raise your gem level, which is one of the few ways that you can actually scale these skills, it's going to go on up. It's going to keep going up to almost 2,000 life. So if I go low life right now at 50% life, I have about 2,750 life. I'm going to be paying 2,000 of my life to activate this skill. that leaves us with 750 life, which is very, very vulnerable. It leaves us in a very vulnerable state. So how do we recover that life? Well, one way is just to have a life flask with the pantheon of Raislata and getting the secondary effect. Increased life recovery from flasks when used on low life. And not only that, we can also stick on something like cautious or panic, where it increases our recovery when we're on low life. And because we're permanently low life, more or less, or like when we're dangerous, we're going to be low life. It's going to make sure that we are popping back up to full HP full HP as quickly as possible. Another thing that we have to look at is how do we recover life without these flasks? Because whenever we do use flask, we are no longer like, it's gonna push us above that 50% low life threshold, so we won't benefit from the fact that we're in low life anymore. So how do we make sure that we can recover life without having to resort to life flasks? Well, there's leech. One of them is leech. The problem with leech is even though our hit damage is relatively high compared to something like poison or essence drain, our leech isn't actually that strong even still. Compared to hit builds, we still have, it looks like PoB struggles to cap out our leech. So this is something that I can't say without personal experience, because PoB doesn't really reflect the actual gameplay of a character. There's a lot of scenarios and situations that you can't really math out or define within path of building program. So I don't know if having 0.5% physical damage leech on an amulet is going to be sufficient to sustain our max leech. Because if we can get max leech, that'll be the best solution. What we do is we go to 50, we reserve 49% of our life, and petrified blood prevents your leech from going above 50%. So we are permanently low life even with full leech effect. So because it doesn't get rid of our leech because we're not full life, but it also stops our life from going up. It basically gives us overleech. And overleech is one of the strongest defensive mechanics you can have. And not only is it overleech, when we're talking about how effective is this leech, normally leech is only 20% of our life with no investment. But by being low life, it's effectively 40% of our effective life pool per second instead of 20%. So leech is doubly effective when you're low life, given that you're using petrified blood to offset the one hits, which is what it's trying to do, which is what GGG intended. So if you can get good leech, that pretty much solves all of our problem. If we don't get good leech, what can we do? Well, we can use regen effects and try to stack regen. I think I have a pretty good amount of regen already, to the point where I can't outspend my 125 life cost. I can definitely outspend me spamming Corrupting Fever, but that costs 850 life. So our regen is pretty decent, and we don't even have Stone Golem active. We're not using Stone Golem right now. So our regen is not too bad, and just like Leech, regen is also doubly effective when we're low life and have petrified blood. Instead of regening 1% of our effective life pool per second, regening 2% of our effective life pool per second. So it's going to be extremely efficient. But one thing that I'm worrying about is sockets. Well, I don't know what we're going to do about sockets. I don't know what we're going to do about our passive tree. I don't know what we're going to do about our gear. Maybe we'll use Prison Guardian. Maybe it's a different answer. Maybe we use a different ring. I don't know. I don't have an answer to everything right now, which is why I'm struggling to find direction in this build right now. But hopefully this discussion has helped you come up with ideas on maybe how to make my build better, or how to make your build better, how we can make our But hopefully this discussion has been helpful, and this rant has not necessarily rant, but this um, spiel of information on what I've learned on day one has been helpful in kind of evaluating your own build and seeing how you can improve your character. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I look forward to an update on what kind of decisions I'll make on my character, what kind of investments I'll make, and I'll see you guys next time.